You are listening to the Knightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Knightline is brought to you by the Dever team, your source for New Smyrna Beach real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Go to www.thedeverteam.com and call UCF alumni Travis Dever for all your New Smyrna Beach needs. 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636.
Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios, and this is Knightline 237 from the award-winning Knightline Sports Network. Joining me, as always, now,
Roger Phipps, and I'm excited. On this week's show, the season's here. The Jackets got stung. Our offense was rust-proofed. Best performers, offense, defense, position group review, pole position, 1, 2, 3, QB. By the lines, defensive line and offensive line, depth. Tigers have been tamed for a second week, while Houston has a problem. Flipping the script and your questions in Ask Knightline.
All right, well, it sounds like we have a pretty full show for you. That's good. Glad to be back to actual live football. College football for UCF has begun, obviously. Roger, what were your initial thoughts of the game?
Well, let me say this about that. There was a little bit of a lull there in the third quarter, but other than that, man, did we smoke Georgia Tech. We did exactly what we needed to do. I was super excited to see the offense, and you heard the rust-proof comment there on this week's show. And for me, I was really looking for the first quarter rust, and there was none. So for me, I was excited to see that offense going. The new wide receivers that are out there with Dylan looked good. We saw a little bit of running by Dylan, although the sliding left a little bit to be desired. Other than that, the defense played pretty well. And quite frankly, I was very happy with what I saw for the most part from our team. Very excited for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Wasn't sure what I was going to think, obviously, of everything just getting started, and I didn't know if we were going to be not fresh at the beginning. The kick return, obviously, by Georgia Tech to open up the game kind of worried me a little bit, obviously, but that's a special teams thing. It happens. That kid's pretty fast. So, overall, though...
And one of our defenders got pushed in the back, but we aren't talking about that.
Well, that always happened. There was a lot of holding in that game as well, so, on both sides. So, the referees were fairly decent to us. In fact, they helped us out on one play big time that I think should have been
Pass
called back that wasn't. Yeah, so they really helped us on that. And then there was a spot of the ball as well that was probably a little bit off. So
yeah, there were a few times they were going back and forth. It's like, do I put it on the 5? Do I put it on the 9? Do I put it on the 7? Oh, let's just put it in the middle.
Yeah, there was the one that Jeff Collins on the other sideline was really, really pissed off about, and we got away with it there for sure. So we didn't really have to play the referees nearly as much as we have in the past, which was really good. I don't know if those were AAC or ACC referees. I wasn't sure, or even from...
Well, they're combined now. Remember, one of the things that Oresco announced last year during the season was that the ACC and AAC are using the same refs.
Oh, we're using the same refs. Okay.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, they weren't either one then. They were both, which was good. Did not like the opening announcement of the game where they called us USF. Well, that was kind of a bummer in the first 3 words of the entire game. So that was bad. And then obviously a very, very biased, crew in the ABC booth, which was a bummer.
Especially to start the beginning of the game, but once things started catching fire, I think by the end of it, they were actually pretty complimentary, but I don't think they had a choice. They definitely were all on the P5 train for sure.
Yeah, well, those guys normally are. So I'm sure that, throughout the game, they understood who UCF was and all that. So it's getting better. I think after these people, if they haven't ever called a UCF game, I think that they get better every time, especially when we go out and play as impressive as we did. I think that really helps with those guys, and they figure out that we're for real,
Yeah, and that's one of the things we'll talk about a little later is how that whole narrative has kind of flipped the script now, especially this season, because I think before, we were just the upstart team. Now, I think we have staying power, being able to do it with Scott Frost and now with Coach Heupel, and then losing Mackenzie Milton and doing it again with Dylan Gabriel. I think it's more about a program, and I think we're starting to change hearts and minds around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. All right, let's get to some clips, some pretty good ones. Some of wasn't a lot of questions asked. The interviews were pretty short for the most part. So let me play first of all. I actually want to play this clip from Jeff Collins, the Georgia Tech head coach and former coach at UCF as well, under George O'Leary. Here's what he had to say about the game.
First off, hats off to UCF, 12th ranked team in the country. Pretty good reasons why they're 35-4, whatever the record is over the last 3 years. That was a good football team. We were doing a lot of really good things, but then the second you misfit something, the second you lose a step in coverage, they're explosive, they're dynamic, they can make big-time plays. So we've seen it. We knew going into it what it was going to be and continue to try to impress that upon our guys. But when you see it, live and in person, hats off to them with the way they run it. Obviously, the Gabriel kid is a really good player, quick release, accurate with the balls, can throw a deep ball very well. So hats off to him. He's a really, really good player. He showed it all last year. Unfortunately, he showed it tonight as well.
Number 6, Marlon Williams had a big day, 10 catches, 2 touchdowns, and a couple of times he ran by the safeties. What did you see from him, and what was the difficulty in trying to stop him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's a really good player, explosive offense, and they moved him around a bunch. And, just some things. We had guys on him, but he's a big-time player, and he made some big-time plays tonight. So just hats off to him. We've got to get better. I'm with those guys every day on the back end, and we were rolling a bunch of guys in and with the tempo and all those kind of things, but really good player. And, again, hats off to UCF. They made the plays that they needed to make. They created turnovers that they needed to create. When they needed the big plays, they made the big plays.
All right. Well, those are some pretty good comments from Jeff Collins. I appreciate that he, gave the credit to UCF. I like it when coaches have conferences like this where, they give credit where credit is due. I appreciate that.
Well, and Jeff, obviously has some experience here at UCF. I think that's part of it. He understands the program, and he's obviously seen us when he was at Temple, so he understands what we're capable of as well. I will say what I am thankful for is they got that audio situation figured out. I thought you were going to pull out your hair when you were getting the clips together this week because they had feedback on that microphone.
Yeah, it was just for the first couple of seconds, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
But yeah, I mean, when we're talking about this, if you're a coach from the other side of the ball, and first of all, I've kind of come to learn a lot about Jeff and what he's doing in Atlanta, and I'm proud of the way he's doing it because I think he is bringing that program up. If you look at last year's team versus this year and how he has unity around the program, he's doing it the right way. And I think what you heard him, if you listen to the whole interview, you heard him talk a lot about them, telling his players and praising them for what they did right, but really throwing the praise where it should be, because it was less about his players' failures and more about UCF's dominance. And I think that came through clearly from Jeff, and clearly it was seen on the broadcast as well when you were watching.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's hear from Josh Heupel and what he had to say immediately following the game.
Just the build-up of what's happened here over the last 6 months. So I said to the players in the locker room, the uncertainty of tomorrow for the last 6 months, when are we going to get back together? When am I going to be able to come back to school and work out? When do I get to be around my teammates? Do we get to practice? Don't we get to practice? Are we going to play? Or are we not going to play? Shoot, they didn't know until 9:30 this morning for sure that we were going to play. It's a group that the brotherhood is real. It's strong here inside of our locker room. They do love one another, man. Really proud of them for staying the course together and growing together over the last 6 months. They've made our coaching staff better. We're closer. We're better as a football family than we were when we got away from each other in early March. Today, for them to go out and compete the way that they did, we give up a kick return early, right? Ball's on the 25-yard line, 30-yard line. They hit one play, go score. Defense doesn't flinch, goes and causes 6 turnovers the rest of the day, man. Played lights out. Offensively, do some really good things in the first half. Obviously the turnover on the fumble, but where we got a chance to continue to punch the score up a little bit. Then the third quarter, we just never got into a rhythm, played behind chains, didn't play with tempo. They pull it to a 2-possession game, and they answer right back. Marlon played fantastic, played strong. Trey Nixon played his butt off. Some young wideouts played really well when given the opportunity. Jalen Robinson made a bunch of plays, and God, you just look at the ability of our kids and our team to adjust. Really proud of what they did during the 60 minutes of football. Speak volumes about our football family. It starts with the players, though. The investment that they've made. We had some kids opt out. We understood why those kids were opting out. There's some unique circumstances that they're dealing with. But our program is built on going 1-0 and not blinking and continuing to compete. They've done that every day. Once we got on the football field, they've competed in a great way. And that's why you're able to go out and perform in week 1. Your first ball game of the season on the road against a football team, that just had a big win last week. I think it speaks to our football program. It speaks to the strength of what we are on the football field, and we're on a journey of going 1-0, trying to do that every day, do that every week. We get a scoreboard this week that says we were able to be good enough, and looking forward to the next opportunity.
All right. Well, good words there from Josh Heupel. I like that, obviously he talked about Marlon Williams' game there. Marlon was absolutely incredible. And I love to see it from him. I've always liked him. I just, we haven't seen him in that role very much that he played in this game, being like the guy. So it's nice to see that, and I think we'll probably see it a little bit more. Because I think that Trey Nixon probably will be out for a little while. It sounds to me like he has a possible broken collarbone. So we're going to need Marlon to step up big time. I am a little bit upset, though, that we did not see Stretch Cradle, because I was really looking forward to seeing him.
I think he was in on a couple of plays, but
he
that was
catch
about
anything.
it.
He's not in the stats, so
Correct.
I'll have to look in the participation report, but I don't remember seeing him. Anyway, here's what Josh Heupel had to say on Dylan Gabriel.
You saw a defense that was completely different than anything that they had on tape. Completely different. And from the first snap on, he had his eyes in the right place. He understood his protections. We made a ton of adjustments on the sideline, and he was flawless in doing all that. And that's extremely hard to do. And I think it just speaks to his growth from year 1 to year 2 in mastering our concepts against all different defenses, understanding defenses and how to attack them. It's big-time football from him.
Yeah, I thought that Dylan Gabriel had an incredible game. He has not lost a step, and I think that maybe he's gained a couple steps as well. I liked him running the ball a little bit. As you said earlier, I believe, or either while we were talking to Kyle, which we'll have coming up here in a little while, we talked about the sliding a little bit. Was not great, but overall, except
I
losing
think that's an understatement.
Yeah,
man.
except losing the fumble. Needs to hold on to that ball a little bit, and I guarantee you he will hold on to it a little bit better the next time he runs it.
Well, I mean, it wasn't like he was flailing his arms around either. He just needed to put another hand on it. He had it up high and tight and up against his body and his arm up and tight. You see a lot of these guys when this happens, especially quarterbacks, they're flailing their arms around and it just pops out. So the defender did an excellent job getting it out of there because he was holding it. About the only other thing he could have done, because he had it on the other side away from the defender, was to put the second hand on the ball. But you're right. I mean, he looked amazing out there. Using him to run the first series, I think was purposeful, obviously, to loosen up the box, and he did a great job with it. So he ended up with I think it was 30 yards, and it was 7 yards a carry. So, if we can get that out of him just to loosen it up so we don't have people crowding the box, because we haven't been using the middle of the field, so at least they won't be keying in on our running backs. I think that's a key because, man, he was putting some touch on some of those balls and tight windows, man. It's just, you look at those, and that's high-level NFL throws that he's putting out there.
Yeah, 8 carries for 47 yards, and then gave 17 yards back. So 30 yards total for him. The longest being 15 and averaging 3.8. So pretty good. The running backs in general only averaged 4.8. So with that, so 272 yards on the ground, which was good. But Dylan Gabriel, 27 for 41, 1 interception, 417 yards, 4 touchdowns. His longest throw being 49 yards, and was sacked twice. So really good showing from Dylan Gabriel as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that you could really, give any kind of criticism on is that, and he ran back quite a few yards on a couple of those sacks, so we lost some time there, or lost some yards there. The other thing on his timing, I think in the third quarter, and it kind of showed, it almost felt like he was sitting a tick too long in the pocket before he released the ball. But outside of that, I mean, it's darn near perfect. He had he did this 660 yards. He had a 66% passer efficiency rating. So basically he connected on 66% of his passes. And, when you have someone who does that, he's doing it against a team that only allowed FSU to average 4.4 yards per catch. So, for him to do that, 471 yards, 4 touchdowns, he had the 1 turnover. But I mean, you can't play much more perfect than that. And I, for one, am thankful that he's behind center for us.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we talked a little bit about Trey Nixon earlier. Let's hear what Coach Heupel had to say on him.
You don't just replace Trey Nixon, right? He's a really good player that's done it at a high level for us for a long time. Made a great play, had a great start to the first half there. Our struggles offensively weren't just directly correlated to Trey. We got behind the chains a couple of times, weren't playing on our schedule and with our tempo, and a situation where I probably didn't put our kids in the best situation either on a critical third, fourth down.
All right. Well, to me, I personally think they just came out a little bit flat in the second half, with a little bit of an adrenaline dump probably at halftime. That doesn't surprise me. But they brought it back. They got it together, obviously, and we won the game, and you saw what happened in the fourth quarter. So good for them to be able to fix what was wrong and get it going again.
Yeah, they had that 1 turnover, and I think that was Dylan's turnover right before the half when we were ready to basically put them away. That would have put us up. We were up by 28-14. That would have put us up another touchdown right before the halftime. So I think maybe that had something to do with it. Coach also talked a little bit about how he could have put our guys in better position a little bit. But the other part of it was, between the injuries, there were so many injuries during this game, and injury timeouts and all that stuff. It just, every single drive and almost every single 4 downs, there was a stoppage in play and they were going to commercial. And you can't get back in rhythm, especially after you've been out for the halftime, if you're doing that every time. And our offense is a rhythm offense that thrives on speed. So that I felt like really, really threw us off in between the penalties and the injuries.
Yeah, I agree. Here's what Josh Heupel had to say on freshman Josh Salazar.
Yeah, not a true freshman, man. Just the way he practices, which is why he plays the way he does today. It's not a surprise for anybody inside of our program. From the beginning of training camp, he's been really mature. Because of COVID, right, our ability to have meetings with our players, our freshmen, a little bit earlier, I think that's accelerated some of those young guys understanding in what we're doing, right? We would have rather been in person with them, but typically our freshmen don't show up until late June. Because of the COVID rules, we were able to get those guys going a little bit earlier on the installs defensively and offensively, and I think that's helped those guys progress early here in training camp in the early part of the season.
One of the things that I love about when the season starts, you get to see guys that you never really thought about before. You didn't see practices, so you didn't really know, besides who the coaches and the other players mentioned. Nobody ever mentioned this guy as far as I know. And then he really surprised us and played very high level. Very, very good game by that kid. And I can't wait to see him play the second one.
Yeah, I mean, the only time I ever heard his name was by one of Mike Lee's dad, or Mike Lee, who's the dad for our center, and he had in this game he had 2 tackles, 1 solo, a fumble recovery, and an interception. So as a
defensive lineman.
Yeah, and he's the 247 freshman of the week. And this guy is a true freshman, and he's out there doing that in his first game. I mean, if that doesn't bode well as a defensive lineman, I don't know what else can. I mean, he almost had that pick 6. I mean, if he wouldn't have tripped over, I think it was Hescock's feet or somebody, he would have had a pick 6. So, I mean, how much better of a first game can you get as a defensive lineman?
Absolutely. Very, very good job. Like I said, I can't wait to see him play again. All right, the last Josh Heupel clip here. Brandon from UCFsports.com actually asked a question of Josh Heupel on the post-game celebration, and you hear a little bit of choked upness, I think, from Josh Heupel here. A little bit of emotion.
After everything everyone's gone through to get to this point to play a game, can you talk about what the post-game atmosphere was like celebrating with your guys?
Awesome, man. The locker room was best locker room I've been in, man. Just guys so excited. Obviously happy about the win, but I think as much as anything, just happy that they got to do what they love to do today. And none of them took it for granted. They love one another, and it's something I'll remember forever.
All right. A very charged up speech, by the way, if you didn't see it on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, social media, by Josh Heupel in the locker room afterwards as well. So I think everybody was really happy with the way things worked out. And it's good to hear some emotion from a coach that doesn't show a lot of it personally.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the video, UCF put a short clip out there too after in the locker room where he said everybody gets a game ball. So he was fired up. You hear from some people in the program that he is one of those guys that likes to have that personal relationship with the players, but he's very, very coy with the media. Not quite like George O'Leary, but you hear a lot of coach speak, and in that moment, you could even hear it in his voice how excited he was. Is we didn't even know if we were going to play, and these guys put in the hard work, not just in the off season, but they also kept within their bubble, which is extremely hard to ask a bunch of 20-year-olds to do. So they put in the work, they put in the time, they put in the effort, and I think he just appreciates the fact that we got to play, let alone that they played so well.
All righty. Moving on now here to Dylan Gabriel. Let's hear his comments on his performance, and this is pretty typical of him. He doesn't talk about himself.
Team played really well. Offensive line, it starts up front. 1 through 5, they picked up a lot of pressures, things we didn't see, didn't expect. I mean, the whole game plan went out the door right after the first play. Running backs did a hell of a job getting the pressure too, and then shoot, man, guys were making plays all over the field. So when that happens, I mean, you see what we can do. And be honest, man, we came out, just not as much as, not as good as we wanted. There's still a lot of things to fix. And I think we left a lot of points on the board, but I mean, we came out, we did what we did. All we can do is play who lines up against us. And I mean, gosh, you saw what happened last week. You can say we're the best team in Florida.
Yes, you can say that we are the best team in Florida, I believe. I do love a humble player, and he a lot of times lately has been throwing in that little thing at the end as well. So maybe Mackenzie Milton is rubbing off on him more than we realize as far as that goes, because Mackenzie was pretty. He would throw something in there like at the end of our national championship game. He said you can stop the playoff now. You can, I guess.
Absolutely.
You can, so stuff like that. And I like that. It shows a little bit of moxie from these guys. But I still love that he, when he's asked about himself, because that's what the question was, what did you think of your performance? And he talks about everybody else except himself.
And he did have a lot of time back there. And actually something that was a small takeaway that people may not have noticed. This year, our running backs did a lot better job of stopping pass rushers. Otis Anderson literally decleated a linebacker from Georgia Tech. I watched it and I was like, oh, that hurt, as a former linebacker myself. I watched that happen. I was like, wow. So Dylan is just basically what he's doing is he's exhibiting leadership. And I think he takes a lot of cues from Mackenzie and he's well on his way. And I appreciate that about him.
Well, one of the things, if you noticed while you were watching on TV, he got the receivers together, I think somewhere in the third quarter or maybe the beginning of the fourth, and talked to the wide receivers, got them together and just had a little powwow. Here's what they asked him what he had to say to them at that point.
All I said was, this is the late nights watching film. You know what I'm saying? This is the work we put in when no one's looking. This is just all the work we put in. You know what I mean? So proud of all three of them. Prayers out to Trey. I love that dude. I'm praying for him. He means a lot to me too, but I'm proud of all of them, and they showed out tonight.
All right, that is showing leadership, number one. Number two, notice that he said he's praying for Trey Nixon. So that tells me, reading between the lines, and that's what we do here, reading between the lines, that tells me that Trey Nixon is hurt badly. Probably a broken collarbone, I'm going to speculate on. But I didn't see any x-rays, nothing like that, but I'm just going to speculate that.
And if it is, typically you're talking 6 to 8 weeks minimum for him to recover from that, depending on how bad it is. And then he's got to get back in conditioning shape. So it really is terrible timing because he had a phenomenal game up until that point. And when he caught that touchdown and landed awkwardly, it really hurt me for him because we said last week we wanted to see him excel, and he absolutely was a difference maker and took the top off the defense and was catching everything that was thrown his way. So, we've got plenty, like you said, the depth we have at wide receiver is great, but I would love to have Trey on that, on those go routes when he's go routes. I keep saying routes, go routes when he's out there.
Yeah, obviously we want to see him out there and we wish him the best, but we've got depth. There's guys that we haven't even seen yet. So I'm excited about the guys that we do have. I'm excited for Marlon Williams, especially because he's going to get the ball a lot. Another guy that's going to get the ball a lot, which we had never really seen before either, Jalen Robinson. Here's what DG had to say about him.
I'm super excited about Jay Flash. I told him, I said, this is your time to shine. This is his first start, I think, in college. And, he played a hell of a game. I don't know how much yards he had, but, he was picking up yards. He was making catches. Sure, he didn't play a perfect game. No one ever does. But, what can you say? We came out with a win. It's next week. It's, we're moving on, and I'm excited to see what he can do down the road.
All right, so he did have 6 for 105, the longest being that 48 that he got thrown. So that was awesome. I like the kid. He's a smaller guy, obviously, but boy, is he fast. They call him Jay Flash. I think that's a good name for him, and I can't wait to see him a lot more. I think he's going to be a big, big part of our offense, especially with Trey Nixon being out.
Yeah, and I expected him to be on the inside, but he was on the outside the entire game. And the biggest compliment that he received, I think, during that game was the fact that Georgia Tech ended up double teaming that side of the balls, or that side of the field. So it actually opened the door for Marlon and a few of the other receivers on that side. That's how well he was doing, especially on the bubble screens. And then they were playing him really, really soft because he was so fast. So with that comeback route that he had, and then just hitting him in that 8 or 9 yard mark and then letting him go, he played lights out. And I was really excited about him. We talked about him last week to see, he was one of the guys I had my eye on, but they completely surprised me by having him on the outside because of his height versus the inside, which is where I was expecting him in like a slot role.
Yeah, I'm going to go back here a little bit and play a clip that I probably should have played earlier. This is Dillon Gabriel talking about the third quarter struggles.
They just played well in the third quarter, put us in some third and longs. Didn't want to force anything. I knew the defense was playing well. Kicked it off or punted it to the defense, and then, the defense played stout. So, we knew, just stay poised. All we can do is keep coming out and playing the next play, and you saw what happened. So,
all right. Well, he said it pretty good there. Just came out kind of flat. So, and the defense did play well. So they luckily kept us in it and kept Georgia Tech for the most part out of the end zone. So that's cool.
Yeah, I was just imagining him raising his eyebrow when he said that, when he was like, and the defense had us covered. And
yeah, I didn't
watch
happened. The video. I just converted the video to audio, so I didn't even watch it. I'm sure he probably did. All right, another thing that we were kind of concerned about, at least I was concerned about last week when we were talking about the preparation for this game, having a new center, Matt Lee. Here is what DG had to say about Matt Lee.
Matt did a hell of a job. We came out. All our keys were different. We come out, we're like, whoa, that's nothing we prepare for. But what I'm so proud of everyone is how we adapt, the maturity of how we adapted. You throw your whole game plan out of the, sliding new protections. You're just going on and on, just new plays, all that. But the way we adjusted, the way Matt slid protections and knew how to get us in good positions, and then likewise with the back, being able to pick up, pressures from different sides, from everywhere. They're flipping boundary pressure to field pressure to everything you could see. So O-line won this game. Running backs won this game. When you win up front, you win every game, and they played a hell of a game.
All right. Well, it looks like maybe Georgia Tech took a little bit out of Cincinnati's book and showed us a completely different defense than they played the week before. So I guess we're going to have to start dealing with that. And that it's hard to game plan for.
No, but what that tells me is that Dillon has matured in the offense enough that he can make those adjustments. And, it also means that our playbook is deep enough that we can make those adjustments on what we're calling in. If you watch them, what Dillon was basically doing, initially they were going with their prepared scheme of plays, and then they stopped it. And what they would do is they'd go line up, they'd see what the defense was giving them. Then he'd put his hands down like, hold up. Then they'd look to the sideline, they get the adjustments in the play, and then they do it. But to Dillon's point, other than the fact that everybody's playing a hell of a game, he was saying that Matt did a great job of adjusting the protections, because at the end of the day, as we said last week, Matt is the quarterback of the line. And when you have an adjustment in scheme like that, it takes a few plays to figure it out. And then, he was able to do that. So between Dillon being able to do that, the running backs being able to do that, the coaching staff being able to adjust on the fly, that's a huge deal. And you saw how that went last year at Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. And then you turn around and see, fast forward this year, I think that shows the growth of the entire unit on the O-line, the running backs, the quarterback, and obviously the coaching staff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It definitely shows some improvement and some really good thought by the coaching staff to be able to make those changes and give those changes to them. They obviously saw what was going on as well, and it's good to have a staff like we have that can make those changes. Maybe earlier in Coach Heupel's career, that wouldn't have happened nearly as easy as it happened. It seemed pretty seamless, though, this week, so that's good. Here's a couple comments from Marlon Williams.
We followed the game plan. We stuck to what we were practicing on all week. We knew that their safeties was not that fast, so if we did what we were supposed to do, we could run by them. And that was just me, the full court, just being a senior, trying to step up for our team. I know we needed a play or two. You had to get our offense rolling. We was in a little stint, but just film study, really. That's how I had a great game, really. A win means everything, We didn't know if we was going to have a season a couple months ago, so I was glad to be out there. I mean, we really didn't know who was going to play. I'm just happy I can play football, happy I can be out there on the field with my brothers. Being in quarantine and over the summer has helped me a lot. Like, I got to get my body down to the weight I needed to get to, work on my speed, because that was the thing that I needed to work on, my route running. It's just being able to really work on my craft will help me this season. Well, it'll help me this game. I see him throw it every day, and I know what type of quarterback he is, and I'll take him over any guy in the country.
All right. Well, I give Marlon Williams my MVP of the game. Yes, it could easily go to Dylan Gabriel as well, but I think Marlon Williams really, really stood up and stood out of that game and was a real key to winning that game. I don't think that we would have won if we didn't have Marlon Williams out there.
Yeah, I mean, he's a man amongst boys. We saw that the past couple of years. He didn't get as many touches as obviously he had this game, but when he was in traffic, he always did a great job of pulling the ball down and then using his body to basically run over people. So we'd seen him in previous seasons also use those bubble screens. They tried that a little bit early as well because he's just such a big body that he can either make people miss or run them over. But to your point, in between the over the shoulder grab that he had, stretching the defense, he had better speed because he was running with or outrunning some of the cornerbacks from Georgia Tech. So he leveled up. He played extremely well. There's a few people I can think of for MVP, but he's definitely a top candidate for sure.
Yeah, 10 catches, 154 for yards, 2 touchdowns, his longest being 40. Led the wide receivers or the receivers by 54 yards or 53 yards, something like that. Jalen Robinson also had 105 yards, so pretty good.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, he slots right in there with those numbers where Gabe Davis was last year. So, I mean, Trey went out around halftime for the game, so I would have loved to have seen what he had because he was at 4.94 for a 23.5-yard average. But Marlon he balled out, and he was what we needed, especially when Jalen started getting double covered.
Absolutely. All right, here's some defensive comments from Richie Grant.
Be on a road like this after last season, we had some tough losses on the road last season, but to come on the road and win like this in this fashion, especially with how this year is turning out. 4 months ago, if you asked me playing football, I would have told you no. I would have told you, I was weighing my options in terms of the next level or not. But the fact that we able to be here right now is a blessing, and like the way we won, that just show you how much we came in, how much we care about each other, and the work we put in to get to this point. We don't call them freshmen. We don't treat them as freshmen. They out there on that field with us, so they're gonna play with us just like they've been here. So they did a great job this afternoon. I mean, you can't really call it no better than that. Like you said, they are freshmen, but we don't treat them as freshmen, and they didn't play like freshmen tonight. I'm just glad to be a part of it, man. This is so fun. The way we winning, the way we just won tonight. Testament to Georgia Tech. They came out. They gave us. Man, a fight. They gave us a fight, but we was clowning. We wanted it more. 6 turnovers. I don't think we've done that since I've been here in one game. And I don't know, man. It's just a testament to the coaches. You know what I'm saying? We've been practicing punching the ball out, being in the right passing lane to be able to get some of those turnovers and And, it was rewarded tonight. So we all grateful for that. UCF is here, man. We always been here. We playing the brand of football that we love. Obviously, it's been a crazy year. So it's been a crazy year this year. So it was a lot of funky stuff going on in that first half. But we all calmed down. We just played the UCF way. To be honest, it was a slight moment there where I was like, I don't know. But I had faith in myself. I knew I had a good hit, a good legal hit. So, you know what I'm saying? I try to show my confidence to my teammates because I'm not worried if I go down. We got guys to step up, and they're going to play their hardest too. But I had confidence that I made a good hit on that quarterback in that play. Man, they all want to learn. They want to be all in with us. They know we're a senior-heavy group, so they want to come in and not miss a beat. I love that about guys who want to learn because you can't play without knowing what to do. And they all just have that factor of, like, just teach me. And I love being able to be the one to do that and be in this leadership role. It's a challenge because they are younger guys. But like I said, from day one, we knew not to don't call on them freshmen. Don't say freshman mistake. Just let them go out there and play.
All right. Well, nice comments as well from him. That potential targeting did worry me a little bit, but watching it in replay, obviously it wasn't targeting, and I like that they amended the rule a little bit this year and made it a little bit more specific what is targeting and what is not, and the officials did a great job with that one.
Yeah, and the thing about it is they're going to call it even if it's a question every single time and look at the replay. So with me, when I watched it live, I didn't see Sims do anything that would lead to him be a defenseless either receiver or runner or offensive player. So when I watched it, I saw Richie's head go to the left and him hit him with the shoulder. Now, he hit him high, but Sims was also crouching. So to me, I was like, there's no way that that's targeting. So I think the refs did a great job with that. To your point, Andrew, I think changing the rule was a necessity, and they've done a pretty good job of enforcing it the proper way.
All right, on next to a new little segment that we're going to do called By the Numbers, and I'm going to let Roger, I'm going to let you go with this one. So go for it.
All right, great. Yeah, so what we kind of wanted to do is pull together some numbers or stats that are interesting, just in general for UCF, but also as a whole for the game. So I'm going to start it with this. For the last 40 games for UCF, we've had 36 wins, which is phenomenal, 39 games with 30-plus points, which speaks to our offense, and 25 500-yard-plus games. Now, 25 500-yard-plus games. Most of the FBS is not getting anywhere near those numbers. So that is just astronomical and unheard of unless you're like Clemson. We've got 5 P5 wins and 4 top 25 finishes. That's a lot of success in the last 40 games for UCF. So, as we're kind of going through this and watching this team play and watching them be successful, remember how special this is because the numbers are just eye-popping.
Yeah, they
next
are.
Next on the list, I've got 660 yards of total offense versus 471 for Georgia Tech. Now, 471 is not something to sneeze at, and something the George O'Leary teams we would have been begging for, but 660 yards of total offense is phenomenal, and it could have been more. We were 10 for 16 on third downs, and we had 5 turnovers. And if you remember last week, third downs was a key to our season, and we absolutely annihilated third downs this week, which was a big key to our success. Georgia Tech, has only given up more yards, 667, and that was to Notre Dame in 1977 since 1892. So they've been playing football since 1892. And if we would have had 7 more yards, we would have had the most that they've ever given up. So kind of put that in perspective. The offensive numbers between both teams was actually pretty close. So I did a little bit of a dive on this from the explosiveness perspective. So this is, how explosive, a measure of how explosive the offense was. UCF versus Georgia Tech, rushing explosiveness was 14 versus 17%. So they actually had a higher rated explosiveness rating for that. And we're known for that. Now, on passing explosiveness, it was 29% to 18% in UCF's favor. So obviously, we all know we do good with the bomb, and that came out in these numbers. Inside the 40, so once you get past the 40-yard line, you're getting closer to being able to score. This is an interesting metric to look at because anything before that really is a dead drive. You're not going to be close enough to be able to kick a field goal, and at this point, you're really thinking about scoring. So we had 59% versus 45% in the explosiveness rating there. Points inside the 40, 42 versus 18. So despite the fact that we were close in the explosiveness rating once we got past the 40, they only scored 18 points versus our 42, which is phenomenal. Opportunities inside the 40, we had 10 versus 6 for them. So that means we were moving the ball a lot better, and that accounts for that difference in the point spread there. We had 16 drives versus their 15, so they had very similar number of opportunities that we did. Our defense just played a heck of a lot better, and our offense just converted. And turnovers really are the difference there. We talked about it last week. Our team can score points, and we need to put the ball in their hands as much as possible. And those turnovers really made the difference in getting that back. The success rates, meaning how successful we were with the running game and the passing game, was actually very similar between the two of us. And the defense made the difference there on the bend, don't break. So in the red zone, we were a lot better. They were pretty terrible. We had that field goal block that helped there. But in the end of the day, that made the difference. And lastly, Dylan Gabriel. So we talked about it a little earlier, 66% completion rate. Last year, he averaged 59. So that was a pretty good jump. 27 out of 41. So he passed 41 times. We don't really think about that, but when you have 16 opportunities, that's a lot of big numbers. So for him to be able to get that completion percentage with 41 attempts is phenomenal. 417 yards, 4 TDs, 1 interception. But again, that was when the defender hit his ball as it was coming out. So it really wasn't on him. That's the third highest rated QB by PFF for the week. So that's 90.3 versus Trevor Lawrence at 97.4. So PFF means the most efficient. That's a quarterback rating, the most efficient rating. He's the number 3 quarterback in the entire country. And that put him squarely on the Manning Award watch list and Heisman watch list.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One other stat that I was looking at, I like to look at total offensive plays. We ran 92 total offensive plays. They ran 81. And we actually won the time of possession, which is very rare for us. We had the ball 31 minutes and 52 seconds. They had it 28 minutes and 8 seconds. So that's a little bit different for us. Normally we're really low on that time of possession, but it really helped us out this time.
Yeah, I think that's a combination of our drives. We're used to big plays, scoring touchdowns, and you saw that with the red zone opportunities this game. We did a lot better with those. We got, it was even mentioned on the broadcast, and you remember last year, once we got into that 20-yard field, it shrinks the field quite a bit and helps the defense out, especially when it comes to the offensive game. So when you're looking for one-on-one matchups, if you have a smaller part of the field that you're trying to cover, it jams up a lot of what the offense is trying to do. So we didn't do as well there. But this game, we did a heck of a lot better. So that time of possession, even though they ran better than we did, we won that time of possession battle by having more drives with those turnovers and being more efficient with those in the red zone.
Absolutely. All right, penalties is another thing that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so, when we're talking about yards, I mean, you think about that 660 yards of total offense, I mean, that really pops, right? In the third quarter, we only had 100 yards, and I hate to say only because 100 yards is still pretty good, but then on top of that, we had 4 penalties for 24 yards, and that was our worst quarter. So again, what we were talking about, slowing down that third quarter, combination of getting us out of our rhythm with folks that were injured, but also we had those penalties. I mean, you give a quarter of your yards away. So tack on another 20 yards onto that 660 right there. And if those drives continue, because it puts us behind and down in distance and makes us a little more one-dimensional, that also is drive killer. We had 5 drives during that quarter that were didn't result in points, and they were pretty quick. So that could have been a whole lot worse. I mean, 700 yards was only a few flicks of the wrist away. And really, the only thing that can stop us is ourselves. We've proved that. It's basically if we have these penalties, the reason they're so crucial is because they get us out of our rhythm, and our offense works best when we're in rhythm and we're moving fast. And lastly, we talk about, if you read, Georgia Tech was talking a lot about holding calls. There was that one missed pass interference, but generally speaking, they were very, very close in the number of penalties that we had, and also the yards that were lost because of it. It was pretty even, and I believe
we had 8 for 51, and they had 7 for 49. So it was really close.
Yeah, and in their favor. And not to mention there were a few pass interference calls that I saw that were missed on their side. So
yeah, and there was a lot of holding and stuff going on both sides. And I feel like that's, for the most part, that's the game of football. I hate it when the referees just call all the holding, on the entire freaking game. It's just a lot. They would have to call a lot more penalties. So I'm glad that they weren't calling all these holding either way, to be honest with you. I just think that it takes away a lot from the game when the referees really make themselves noticed a lot more. And they didn't really that much during this game.
Yeah, it depends on the game, too. Sometimes they'll try to make a point of that early and just call everything and then back off. And then sometimes they'll just, if they
not
see
call
a team.
Anything.
Not call anything. But if they see a team taking too much of an advantage, they will. In this case, I think it was more the latter than the former.
Right. Absolutely. All right. The next one you got, there were some people missing.
Yeah, so one of the things that I don't think people realize, and you've heard this narrative about people missing on Georgia Tech side, and they didn't really address it on our side. You heard all week, hey, UCF's got 10 people that opted out. Well, really, and this was news this week, we actually have 8. Offensive linemen Lamarius Benson and Adrian Medley both opted back in. So, but even with those guys, back, we had 16 people that didn't play. Parker Boudreaux was out with a concussion this week. Trillian Coles announced this week that he was out with an Achilles.
And that'll be the season for him.
Yeah, we've been asking
bad injury.
Yes,
anytime a football player, especially a running back, injures their Achilles or ruptures it or tears it, it's just like a knee, maybe even worse, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and he's actually been out since, I believe, July or August. So he just didn't announce it to anybody. So there's another 2 guys that were out. You saw Trey Nixon go out in the game. Greg McCrae went out in the game, although I'm hearing that he's going to be okay from some people. Cam Good, who had some good plays as well, he was out the second half of the game. He got injured. He did not go back in. Antoine Collier was banged up, and Cole Schneider was banged up as well. So he didn't play as often as he normally would either. So, when we are hearing about that, what that says is there's a lot of depth that we have, which is great. But it's also something that they didn't call out. So we beat these guys up the way that we did with a lot of depth, which speaks more about the growth of our program. And I think it's important to note because it certainly wasn't called out during the broadcast.
Yeah, and I think that this was something that we were kind of prepared for as well with the short season. We talked a little bit about that with some guys before the season. We thought maybe there were going to be some injuries happen a little bit more because of the practices being a little bit different and the time off and all that stuff, and how long would it take to get back. So some of this, is expected. I just hope that it doesn't continue. I hope that we get these guys back for the most part, and we can keep going, because the depth only lasts so long.
And I mean, when you look at it too, part of it is that they're operating on turf. So for us, we've got grass. So when you look at Trey Nixon and how he kind of fell on his shoulder, does he do that when there's grass and there's a little bit of give? I mean, the turf is basically concrete with a carpet over it. So that's a little frustrating as well.
Yeah, it's not nearly as bad as the turf that I played on, though. I played on the original AstroTurf, and that was concrete with carpet on the top of it and no kind of pad. This new, if you've walked on the fields at all on this new turf, it's a lot more like playing in grass. It's got the little rubber pellets, and those things really give you a lot of cushion, believe it or not. So it's a lot better than it used to be, I can say, for being an old guy. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, we'll have Kyle Israel giving us his take on what he saw during the game.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
Raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney is our commitment to you at Chadbar Law. I'm Chad Barr, and as a UCF alum, I am proud to present Knightline at Night, Central Florida's only call-in show dedicated to our UCF Knights, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. And remember, if you or a loved one are injured in an auto accident, call us at 407-599-9036 to schedule your free consultation, or visit us at chadbarlaw.com. Offices Altamont Springs. Go Knights, charge on.
Welcome to Inside the Huddle with former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, brought to you by the Little Greek Fresh Grill. Fresh, flavorful, fabulous. Waterford Lakes, 855 North Althea Trail, Orlando. All right, please welcome back Kyle Israel. Kyle, wanted to get your take, first of all, on Dylan Gabriel's playing this week. He played a pretty good game, I think, for the first game of the season. What's your opinion on that?
I think he played a phenomenal game, all things considered. The fact that, this team wasn't together for nearly 90 days in the off season, and nothing was essentially the same as it normally is throughout summer as far as getting on the same page with wide receivers and getting the offense together and working with those guys. So for him to go out, throw for 400 plus yards, 4 touchdowns, really, really efficient throughout the game, and some just unbelievable throws that were big-time NFL throws, especially the last touchdown to Marlon Williams. I'm very, very happy with what I saw out of Dylan. I think it'll be a great confidence booster for him going into next week. And from a quarterback perspective, I don't know that we could have played much better.
Hey, Kyle, thanks for joining us again. Real quick, one of the things that we had talked about last week was using the middle of the field, and didn't seem like we did that this week and didn't really need to. What was your take on the receivers? And, Dylan's getting used to a new set of receivers and go-to targets with Jalen Robinson and then obviously Marlon Williams again. So what was your take on his connection with them? And do you think he missed a beat?
No, I don't think he missed much of a beat. I mean, we obviously talked about him attacking the middle of the field using the tight end. But what Georgia Tech did is they played so much man-to-man coverage and soft zone at times on the 2 outside receivers that I think we just took advantage of that. When he got one-on-one matchups with a corner, 6 yards or less away from the receiver, they were taking shots down the field. And then other times through the games, with that tempo, sometimes the defense just can barely get set and the corners are starting off 10 to 12 yards away from the wide receiver. And when they did that, he took some of those underneath, hitch or comeback routes. So I think he took what Georgia Tech gave him. And, with our wide receivers, I think we know Marlon Williams is a special player. We've seen him for 2 or 3 seasons now. His size, his athleticism, his ability to catch the football with hands in his face in traffic. He really had the first touchdown catch that he caught was in traffic or kind of obstructed, and the last was a challenging catch as well over the shoulder. And then obviously the throw before that where he caught it in coverage. I think that Marlon's going to be a guy for us all year, and he's really started a campaign for a draft pick, I think, after his performance yesterday. You look at Trey Nixon. We know Trey's a deep threat. We know he has the ability to get away from coverage, especially in one-on-one. And he was able to do that and get some separation throughout the game. Dylan threw a beautiful ball to him on that touchdown. And obviously, I certainly don't want to speculate about injuries, but the way that he grabbed that potential collarbone after he was tackled is obviously concerning. My good friend Rocky Ross, who many UCF fans will remember, broke his collarbone, kind of coming down on his shoulder after a catch. So we really hope that Trey's okay. And then, Jalen, with what he was able to do on the outside, transferring from Oklahoma, we knew that he was a speedster, super fast, wasn't going to replace the size of Gabe Davis, but was going to replace some of that deep threat potential that we saw with Gabe Davis the last couple of seasons as well. So from a wide receiver perspective, I think that we're going to continue to get better. There's some young guys, O'Keefe and others rotating in there. And Dylan has an arsenal of players to throw the football to. And so I feel very, very good about where our passing game is. I think Dylan is dialed in. And I think Coach Heupel, from a passing game perspective, called a great game.
All right, so Dylan Gabriel, 27 of 41, 417 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was sacked twice. He threw 1 interception. But the thing that kind of worries me a little bit, I mean, he hasn't run as much, nearly as much as Mackenzie Milton did, obviously. But he's starting to run a little bit more, and he lost that one, fumbled the one ball the one time. Does that concern you at all, or does he just need to learn how to carry the ball a little bit better?
I'm concerned zero. I think that, yes, on that play, he needs to protect the ball a little bit better in traffic, maybe get 2 hands over it. That's disappointing that you fumble right there as you're driving down to potentially score again. But Dylan ran the ball well. He ran it on 4th down for a first down conversion. He protected himself most of the time when he got outside of the pocket. If we ever anticipate Dylan moving the way that McKenzie did, we're just going to be disappointed. I think McKenzie's ability to run with the football in his hands is, spectacular and hard to match. But I think that if Dylan is timely with his runs, and if those are strategic runs in certain scenarios, he can certainly get the job done. I'm not sure he's ever going to scamper for a 40-yard touchdown, but 6 to 8 to 10 yards are definitely something he's going to be able to get us. And as long as it's timely, and as long as it's something that we need, awesome. But, frankly, the way Dylan's throwing the football, I don't really think it's necessary for him to get outside of the pocket and run much. There's going to be teams that try to force him to do that and bring maybe more pressure than we saw from Georgia Tech. But, again, as long as he protects the football, he'll learn from that. And I think that he'll be better for it.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about opening up the offense a little bit, we were also talking about Dylan's ability to run. And quite frankly, I'm less afraid of him running and more afraid of his sliding. I mean, at times he looked like a kid that was like at T-ball practice out there trying to get a base. But, what's interesting about him, they played a lot more read option. And I think that was great, instead of just seeing people run straight up the gut, regardless of what look the defense was giving him. He went ahead and tucked the ball and ran a few times, and he did that early. So I think that kind of set a tone, and hopefully trying to set linebackers from crashing the zone. They ran a 3-3-5 this time, which was a different defense than what Georgia Tech normally runs or has shown on film. So from a quarterback's eyes, when you get someone like Dylan who's back there, it's his first game of the season, and then all of a sudden you've done your game prep and everything else, and all of a sudden they put a 3-3-5 out there. What do you have to do as a quarterback to overcome that, to get your checks and understand what the defense is giving you?
Well, right away you got to figure out where the 4th guy is, right? So when you have 3 down linemen, and remember that Georgia Tech was missing one of their starting defensive linemen, so that may have been some of the reason that we saw a different defense. It could have been, our offensive scheme as well. But you got to find out who they're counting, and by that I mean Georgia Tech, as the fourth down lineman. Once you figure that out, then you can identify the three linebackers, and then the safeties and corners obviously become very easy to identify. So that's what I would have been focused on the first drive or two is, okay, who is Georgia Tech counting as the fourth down lineman? And then you can start to set protections to make sure you're picking up, the five key guys that the offensive linemen need to pick up, and you can redirect it back to the sixth man, and you're always hot off the seventh. So that's what I would have done. I saw a scenario like that back in 2007. We played Mississippi State. They ran a 4-3 a majority of the season, came out in the bowl game in the Liberty Bowl in a 3-4, and it really threw us off. I didn't play well in that game. We weren't able to run the ball well in that game. So it can be challenging when that happens, and it is something that's noteworthy because I think he responded to it well. I think Coach Heupel and our offensive staff adjusted very well, to that defensive scheme, and we were really able to put some pressure on their defensive backfield that they just didn't know how to deal with. And so, that's one of the nice things about going in and playing a team that changes something up. It gives you confidence that no matter what somebody throws at you, in a game, and we're now becoming a team and an offense that teams think about all year long and how they're going to game plan for us and how they're going to strategize for us and what they're going to do defensively specifically against us. And for us to respond to something different like we did, I think is exciting for the rest of the season.
All right, let's talk about the defense a little bit. What did you think overall? I mean, with the turnovers, I think they did a great job. I do think that the defensive line was getting manhandled quite a bit, though, especially in the first half.
Well, Georgia Tech has some bigger offensive linemen. They really do. Coach Brent Key, who we all know very well at UCF, is their offensive line coach. He's one of the best, if not the best, offensive line coach in the country. And, we have some younger guys up there up front, and our size is just different. It's a little bit more lengthy than it is, really stout. So I expected Georgia Tech to, from their offensive perspective, to be able to control the line of scrimmage some. Obviously, they were able to run the ball well at times throughout the game. They were also missing their starting running back, which was a loss for them going into the game. But I think the defense, really, I look at the linebackers, and early in the game, I don't know that the linebackers were really running sideways, sideline to sideline well, weren't scraping well. We didn't really get guys running downhill. I think that'll continue to improve. When you're in this COVID scenario and there's not as much contact in camp, not as much live tackling, it takes a little bit of time to get adjusted. And I think the scenarios have flipped, right? Usually people would say defenses are ahead of the offense, but with this contactless type of camp scenario, I think this is a year that the offenses may be a tiny bit ahead of the defenses. So I think we have some improvement to make. I think that at the end of the day, we're able to create turnovers, but you'd like to see us get a little bit more stout up front. You'd like to see our linebackers working sideline to sideline and then downhill a little bit better. And I think those guys will get, be improved as the season goes on. But you can't knock them because they created some serious turnovers. Obviously, with that strip early in the football game, as Georgia Tech was going down to score, that was a huge momentum swing in the game. And yeah, there were a bit of concerns, but nonetheless, I think we played pretty well overall. But if we're going to be a team that wants to contend for the college football playoff, whether or not we can get in, we're going to have to continue to play better as far as the run game goes.
Yeah, I think you hit something on the head. That was my biggest concern coming out of the first half was really the linebackers and the ends. The ends themselves was a concern for me to begin with, and we're a pressure defense, meaning we want to get pressure on the quarterback to throw the rhythm off of whatever play is happening. I saw the linebackers miss a lot of gaps. They ended up with two of the three linebackers ended up with some pretty good numbers. But they were missing gaps. To your point, they weren't scraping properly because, as we talked about last week, a mobile quarterback has been a problem for us and has given us fits. And Gibbs and Sims both were able to get the corner early and often against our defense. So what's different, or what can we do differently there? And then how badly does that hurt our backfield and our cornerbacks and DBs as they're trying to handle the receivers and then pull their safeties down if we need to for a blitz?
Well, I think that we'll probably see a little bit more pressure from the defense. I don't know East Carolina's offense very well as we go into next week, to be quite honest with you, just yet. But obviously pressure overall helps, right? We saw Randy Charlton get some pressure on that screenplay, which led to an interception there late in the football game. But pressure is always going to help our defensive backs. And if you're able to create pressure from a blitz scenario, if you're able to create pressure from a rush end, then either it's going to throw the timing off for the quarterback and receivers, and or you're going to have a quarterback that tries to get rid of the ball and force it. So anytime that you can create pressure scenarios, it's going to help your defensive backfield. I think what can we do to improve? It's going to take some reps, and I think it's going to take another solid week of practice. They'll go in, see on film where we can improve, and at the same time, continue to rotate guys in and get a lot of guys some work there up front. I think East Carolina is a game that UCF is going to be a heavy favorite going into, and so you should be able to get a lot of guys playing time. But we're going to have to continue to improve at the linebacker position throughout the course of the season.
All right, anybody on the offense that stood out for you really, really had a good game?
Other than Dylan? I think our offensive line played pretty well at times, to be honest with you. They opened a nice hole for Greg McCrae on that touchdown run. They gave Dylan the time that he needed throughout the course of the game to make those throws. And I was really anticipating, what we're going to see out of Jalen Robinson. And I think that he's a guy that, is clearly going to be a speed threat on the outside. I was watching the game with Rocky Ross, and he mentioned that he loved Jalen's speed and his ability to catch and then stay in bounds and get extra yards. And that's something that's going to be necessary for us in some of these tougher ball games down the road. But I'd say the offensive line played pretty well. And the running backs, they did what was asked of them. They got some tough yards when we needed them to. They ran really, really hard. They broke through the first tackles. Obviously, it stinks to see Greg go down with an ankle injury like that, but we have an extremely deep running back core, and I think Montavious Thompson, like I've said to you, Andrew, for the last 2 years, is a guy that we're going to just wait to break out, and so we may see him get some more runs. I like what he did when he was in there, and so I think that, again, I'll say the offensive line because they've created some scenarios where Dylan had time to throw down the field, some deep passes, and they were also able to open up some holes. Even though I think Georgia Tech's D-line gave them some fits at times, overall I think they played really well.
I guess since we're going with that offense versus defense theme, I kind of wanted to look at, did you see anybody spying the quarterback? Because I didn't see anybody in the entire first half spying the quarterback, which is something I think that we were missing. And then secondly, who's your defensive standouts that you'd like to call out this week?
I didn't notice a spy. I felt like with Sims being a freshman that we could have anticipated him, tucking the ball and running quite often. We did find ourselves in scenarios with one-on-one matchups, which usually leaves an extra guy in the box. And sometimes you don't need a spy when you have that. You kind of got that guy who's in coverage, but at the same time keeping his eye on the quarterback. Sims was able to get some yards. Without a doubt, and I would expect that. He's one of the more talented recruits at the quarterback position athletically across the country in a long time. And so I thought he was going to give us some challenges, and you got to give him credit for the yards that he was able to gain. But I think Richie Grant set the tone in the defensive secondary, obviously coming down and making that big hit on Sims. He was kind of all over the field there for our defense. And then you got to look at the freshman, Joshua. I can never say, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, number 88.
Salazar.
He was a guy Salazar, yeah, he was a guy that the coaching staff was high on throughout the course of camp and really excited about him. And so it was great to see him get his hands on the ball one time and almost may have been able to return that interception for a touchdown had he not tripped on his own feet. Which happens from time to time. But, I thought our defensive backfield as a whole played well. I thought Richie Grant really, really played well, was a great leader during the game. And I still think that we have some great athleticism across the front that will only get better with time.
Josh Heupel has received a little bit of criticism, as he pretty much always does, on calling the game. What did you think? I know that there was a little bit of a lull in the third quarter, and then we got things going again. But overall, how did you like the way the game was called and the play, calling and all that?
I loved it. I mean, yeah, I think Coach Heupel's going to get some criticism just because of who his predecessor was and what 2017 felt like from just an efficiency perspective. But he drew up plays where guys were getting the ball down the field. He called some plays that had wide receivers getting wide open on the sideline in chunks when we needed them. And he was able to, really get the offense going there in the fourth quarter. Yes, I thought that we could have done some things a little bit different in the third quarter, but overall, we found ways to get the ball in our playmakers' hands. I don't think we showed too much. A lot of the stuff that we ran, we just leveraged our athleticism to make plays for us. And I was very happy with the way that he called the game. You guys said it. The Georgia Tech came out in a different defense than we anticipated. He made adjustments in game, and he gave Dylan opportunity to hit guys open down the field and created some one-on-one matchups with our schematics. So I was very pleased with the way Coach Heupel coached overall, the game plan that he called. There's always room for improvement, but I certainly am not going to lose any sleep with the way that he coached the football game.
Yeah, and to your point, Coach called himself out a little bit when he was asked about the third quarter in the post game and putting his guys in position in third and fourth downs, which thankfully I was very happy to see that our third down conversion rate went way up versus what it was last year. I have a different kind of question for you. On, towards the end of the game in garbage time, you use that time to get your quarterbacks and your backups some game experience. We noticed that Quadri did not, who's supposed to be the number 2, did not come out. Instead, Parker Navarro was out. There's a few different reasons I could think of to do that. How does that affect Quadri, and what do you think the reasons were behind that?
I think that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure. I think, with a guy like Parker, you're always one play away from the next quarterback. And if Dylan went down and Quadri went in, as we would anticipate, you'd hope that the guy behind him has a little bit of experience. And so I think getting Parker out there and some live snaps in a game will be beneficial to him down the road, will be beneficial to our team in the case that we get stuck in a scenario where Dylan gets injured. I don't know if there was any particular reason why Quadri didn't get in as far as something that happened throughout the course of the week. However, if it truly was to get Parker some live reps and see what he can do and get him comfortable, then I think that it was mission accomplished. But I was shocked as everybody else when he came onto the field and Quadri didn't. So you wouldn't anticipate that, right? You generally see the backup quarterback come in that scenario. But any news about Quadri would be news to me. And I know that Quadri's a heck of a player. So it's interesting. It's unique, but I don't know that you need to put an asterisk by it. I think just getting Parker some reps may have been what the goal was.
Kyle, thank you very much for joining us again. We finally have football. We'll look forward to talking with you again after next week's game. We don't know too much about ECU, so we will have to see what happens there in that game, but we'll talk to you about it next week.
All righty, sounds good, guys. I think that we shouldn't lose sight. That was a nice win on the road. I think Georgia Tech will win some games down the stretch as their quarterback gets more comfortable, as their offense gets more comfortable, as they get more coached up. I think they may sneak a win or two out that people don't anticipate. And when you beat a team in the ACC by 28 points the same day that Coach O'Leary was put into the Hall of Fame, it doesn't get much better than that.
Hey, Jeep Wrangler owners, have you ever sat in your office at work and watched the rain just pour into your Jeep because the weatherman said that there was a 0 chance of rain? Or you put your doors back on because there was a 100% chance and then not a drop of rain fell? Well, there's a company out there that can help take the worry away and give you the peace of mind to be without your doors. The company's called Life Without Doors. They make waterproof rain curtains and dash covers for Wranglers. Life Without Doors is there to help make the decision to leave the doors at home an easy one. Find out more at lifewithoutdoors.com.
Oviedo Brewing Company is the hottest microbrewery in Central Florida. Located 7 miles from UCF at the Oviedo Mall, this 8,800 square foot brewery just opened its doors 6 months ago and has already crafted 13 unique beer flavors and counting in their tap room. The tap room contains different styles of beverages, including ciders, wines, and craft sodas. Not only do they have amazing beers, they also have a full kitchen with gourmet pizzas, wings, and tacos. Oviedo Brewing has activities for each day of the week, such as Taco Tuesdays, Trivia Wednesdays, Pizza and Pint on Thursdays, plus live music on Friday and Saturday evening. But the best is Sunday brunch with unlimited beer mimosas. Need a spot for game day? Oviedo Brewing is just the place with their large TVs to catch all the live games. You'll also find Oviedo Brewing at UCF tailgating sampling beers. And OBC support for the Knights doesn't stop there. If you need a spot for UCF away games, come to Oviedo Brewing Company, where the Knightline sports crew will be broadcasting live after the game. You can get all the details on their Instagram or Facebook page. Follow them at Oviedo Brewing CO. Download the Untapped app, and you can find out what beers are on tap. The food menu is also available on their website, oviedobrewingco.com.
All right, and I think that breweries and bars are back open now, so please go see those guys at OBC Brewery there inside the Oviedo Mall. OBC Breweries. All right, here is another new segment. We're coming up with all kinds of stuff for you. This is Roger's 5-alarm hot take of the week.
Yeah, so this week, and that was a great intro, by the way, and yes, go see the guys over at OBC. So my 5-alarm hot take of the week is the team goes undefeated this year, meaning UCF, but won't play all of their conference games. So the reason I bring that up is Memphis is out for a second game due to COVID. Those guys need to get their stuff together. And Houston has missed 4 games this season already, that 2 of which have been canceled during the season. So there's a little concern there. Andrew, what do you think about that? Do you think we'll play all of our conference games?
I do, actually, because we have less games than those guys do anyway. And it's nice that they're missing some games, honestly. I don't wish COVID or anything on anybody, but it puts us a little bit more even, because you remember we only had 9 games and they have more. So that helps us. Also, I do think that we play all of our games, so I'm not going to agree with you there as well, because I think that we keep our bubble tight. These teams, obviously, Memphis has a new head coach. I don't think he's got control over those guys, and he's not keeping the bubble tight. And I think Dana Holgerson in Houston doesn't have very much control over his guys, obviously, because he's not keeping his bubble tight, obviously. So I think that we have a different situation, personally.
Yeah, and I agree with you on our end. I think you heard Coach get a little emotional about it, and I think it's actually been a bonding experience as much as they've missed like the barbecues and all the stuff that they're used to doing. I do think from our side, since our guys are keeping their bubble close, I think that should bond the team together a little bit more. My concern is really not us. It's these other teams. Like you said, Memphis and Houston, they just have not been doing a good job of controlling their bubble. So for me, my concern is more them than it is us. And I'm hoping that we do make it through, because we need all of these games, especially as we're well positioned in the polls for the time being. And you know, I do think we could win every game. We talked about that last week. I do think we could do that. I'm just hoping these guys hold up their end of the bargain.
All right. Well, moving on. Speaking of the polls, a new segment yet again. All right, if you don't know what that music is, you're not as old as I am. All right, well, that was the music from Pole Position, the video game, way back in the day. It was one of my absolute favorites, so we're going to call this segment pole position. Roger, take it away.
Thanks, Andrew. And I'm with you. I'm old enough to remember that as well. So unfortunately, that means I have a little gray hair. That being said, let's talk polls. So to start off, we'll start with the coaches poll. The coaches poll moved us down this week to number 15 after including the Big Ten. They moved Penn State to number 13, so just ahead of us. Basically, we knew that the coaches poll would include the Big Ten, even though they haven't played yet. The AP will not include them until they have played their first game. So coaches poll also moves Miami to number 14 after they beat Louisville 47-34. So we've been talking about the big three. I guess this time it's FSU dropping out because they played terribly. And Miami is part of the big three with UCF and UF. So what do we think about the AP poll? Well, I asked that question before it came out. Now we have our answer. AP moved us to number 13. And again, last week, Cincinnati was ahead of us. We've moved ahead of Cincinnati. But yet again, Miami is in at number 12. So we have some Miami will be playing Georgia Tech down the road. So I'm going to be the biggest Georgia Tech fan going forward because I want to be put ahead of Miami.
Yeah.
Usually they fail at some point, but
I think that
De'Aaron King's doing well.
These polls are ridiculous. I mean, I don't even think we should have a poll until midway through the season, to be honest with you. Preseason polls suck, and they suck like at the beginning of the freaking season. There's really not even enough body of work for any of these teams to have them ranked where they are, and especially in the coaches poll, they put the Big Ten, which hasn't even played. They're not gonna play until October 24th. It's ridiculous, personally.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, the thing about it is it does affect the playoffs. So these folks being able to put these polls together ahead of time, and especially without seeing anybody playing, it's building bias into the system.
Obviously.
And we know that the playoff is biased anyway, and it really won't impact us positively until we get to an 18 playoff. But at the end of the day, it creates a disadvantage for a lot of good teams. And here's a perfect example that Don Williams, our favorite AP voter, has us at number 19. Now, he's the lowest. I want to know how Don Williams can justify having us at 19 versus all of the other teams that are ahead of us.
Yeah, well, that guy's pretty old, isn't he? Don Williams?
He is an elderly statesman of the journalism profession.
Yeah.
However, that is no excuse for being stupid. So he's just being blatantly stupid and ornery and a few other words that I could put in here that we're going to keep it safe for little kids' ears.
Yeah.
But at this point, I mean, if you blatantly act like that, nobody has us even close to 19. I don't know why you have an AP vote, because the last 4 years he's been doing this to us consistently.
It's bias. I mean, it's obviously pure bias. So, okay, let's move on from the bias and let's talk a little bit about what our team looks like position by position here real quick.
Okay.
Not every position, obviously. We're going to do the O-line, the running backs, the wide receivers, just hit on some points, the defense, stuff like that. So let's talk about the O-line first. You had a lot to say, I think, last week about the O-line as well. So what were your thoughts on the O-line?
Well, they actually played pretty well, and you heard Dylan talk about it a little earlier in that they were able to make adjustments when they saw a defense that they were completely unprepared for. So we had some questions on the O-line. One of the things that was answered is Sam Jackson can play every position in the O-line. So he's going to be very, very important. And this week, he literally, against Georgia Tech, played every single position. So clearly, they're still shaking things out. However, I did notice a pretty good analysis done by someone on UCFsports.com that goes by Alumnight03. And he took a look at the scoring drives and who was in what position on the line. I thought it was pretty interesting. So for the first one, we had Collins, Jackson, Lee, Powell. I'm not sure how to say this one. Paoli and Tatum. He was the transfer from Tennessee, and he played really, really well, which surprised me because he has adjusted to our speed and how we work very quickly. On the second scoring drive, it was Jackson, Schneider, Lee, Powley again, and Tatum. Third drive, it was Collins, Schneider, Lee, Jackson, Tatum. Fourth drive, Collins, Schneider, Lee, Powley, Jackson. Fifth drive, Collins, Schneider, Lee, Powley, Jackson. Sixth drive, Jackson, Schneider, Lee, Powley, Tatum. And seventh drive, Collins, Jackson, Lee, Powley, and Tatum. So, again, we know that we rotate guys in because we move so quick. We wear those big uglies out pretty quickly. But it seems like there is a starting five rotation that is settling in for our O-line group, and they played really well this week.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's just not natural, moving around, putting guys in, that are fresher than other people. So, I don't know. Who knows the reason for moving guys in and out besides that? I just think it's to keep guys fresh and let everybody play a little bit. So, I'm not worried about that, to be honest with you. It's not something that it won't keep me up at night. We'll just say that.
Yeah, and I do think, though, I don't think we've ever had a lineman who has played every single position in a game, and Jackson has done that successfully. So hats off to Sam Jackson. He's doing a great job and clearly has learned every position, which is even more important this season as we move along and have the threat of someone being ill or injured and being out.
Yeah, and that could be another reason as well. I mean, they want to get all these guys in and move them up and down the line, especially him. It sounds like he's the guy that can play all the spots. Hopefully we never have to see him at center. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there is a very good reason for this.
Yeah. So setting up that O-line sets up our running back. So one of the things we wanted to take a look at was our running back. So Otis looked great today again, and he's the one who got us energized in the third. I don't know if you remember from the game, but we were kind of slow and sluggish, and then all of a sudden he burst out with 3 quick runs, one right after the other. It was the same exact play, but pushed it in for a touchdown. So you just could feel the energy when he was running, and he just wanted to push it, and it gave us the ability to get in the end zone. He had 18 carries today for 88 yards, 4.9 yards per carry average, and 1 TD. Greg McCray, meanwhile, had 9 carries for 50 yards and a 5.6 yard average, which was looking great until he had the injury. So both of those guys who are our starters in the rotation for running back were averaging right around 5 yards per carry, which is phenomenal. Bentavious Thompson had a little time in as well. He got 12 carries for 30 yards, 2.5 yard average, but he did get that TD. As we mentioned earlier, Dylan Gabriel had 8, and then he adjusted for the sacks. He had 30 yards for a 3.8 yard per carry. And then what I really got excited about, and I know it was garbage time, but Richardson and Goody both got in. Richardson had 2 carries for 24 yards, and then Goody had 2 for 21. So both of those had a 12 yard per carry and a 10.5 yard per carry average, and they both looked electric. So I'm really excited, and it sets us up for next year because Otis will no longer be here, and I think Greg McCray will be gone as well.
Yeah. Well, I was looking forward to watching Greg McCray. Hopefully he gets better from the ankle or whatever he's got going on, because he had a 5.6 yard average, and he was doing very well. This running back room is so loaded that you could put pretty much any of these guys out there, I think. It was nice to see the freshmen as well, and Johnny Richardson does look incredible and exciting as well. I personally think we need to pick one of these guys to really just pound the ball with, and I think personally, if Greg McCray is not healthy, it should be Benno Thompson, because he is just... I love the way that this kid runs. He runs with a little bit of patience as well. You saw one where he just kind of waited and then hit the hole really hard. So that was the guy that I was excited about once he got out there and started running the ball. But again, I hope that it's Greg McCray. I hope that he has another 1,000-yard season. We've been looking for that ever since before last year. So.
Yeah, and he was slowed down by injury last year, but this year, what he does so well is he is patient with and picks the right hole. So he can see lanes. His vision is phenomenal. So you'll see him be patient on blocks, wait for gaps to open up, and then he runs and he goes, and he's got pretty good speed as well. So Bentavious, he's definitely a north-south runner. He's a bigger body, which is something that whole lightning and thunder concept is going to be important for us going forward, especially since we like to run between the tackles.
Yeah, but Greg and Otis actually did a really good job running up the middle, which Otis was doing a really good job at it there for a while. So,
well, you saw him too. He was picking his poison a little bit more this game than we have seen before. Before it was one cut and go.
Yeah, it's obvious that they've worked on that, and they needed to. From last
absolutely,
year, especially. There were so many times last year we saw Adrian Killens trying to run up the middle and did not do really well doing that. Every once in a while would break one, but we don't have him anymore, and I liked the way that the running backs looked a lot better this time.
Yeah, and Richardson's kind of like that same mold as what AK was, except the difference is he has a bigger body. He's built bigger. He has more weight on him, more muscle. So it'll be interesting to see how he figures into the rotation moving forward as well.
All righty. Well, let's move on to the wide receivers.
Well, we talked about them at length. The big thing, I was impressed with Marlon, impressed with Jalen, sad about Trey. Jacob Harris got a couple of targets for 28 yards for a 14-yard average. Now, he dropped a couple of balls, but he definitely is a viable option for us, especially long term. He caught a couple down the middle. It was almost like a tight end catching something. And then we had Otis. He caught 3 for 21 for a 7-yard average, which is good for a check down because once he gets open in space, he can be gone. And then we actually had a tight end catch a pass, but it was only for 4 yards.
Yeah.
So Jake Hescock.
I was a little disappointed that we didn't see the tight end more. I really thought that we were going to. I still think that it's going to get worked in as we go.
Yeah, and what you heard was that our coaching staff was working with the tight ends and that the tight ends are coming along and specifically singled out Hescock. So hopefully he can put it all together and we can start using that middle of the field better because I think that is the last piece of the offense where that we're missing, where it just comes completely unstoppable. Because then you've got 5 different directions you can go with Dylan running. You got great running backs. You've got a good outside threat. If you can get the middle of the field working, either through an option with Dylan running or hitting the tight ends, it's going to be basically impossible to stop.
All right, let's move on to the defense a little bit.
All right, so defensively, one of the big things that you brought up last week was the linebackers, and I just remember during the game, I was, and you heard Kyle talk about it a little bit, the linebackers and getting containment. That was my big concern. We had a little problem with that at the beginning of the game. Quarterback got loose quite a bit, going sideline to sideline. The running back did as well. We still have to work on that containment, and it didn't look like the linebackers were scraping or getting there in time and reading it properly. So I don't know if that's a speed issue or if that's just learning the keys and understanding the keys and it just being the first game. That being said, Gilliard did fairly well. He got 10 tackles with 6 solo and 2 tackles for a loss, which was huge. Eric Mitchell had 6 tackles. 3 of those were solo. Tatum Bethune was not really a big factor. He only had 2 tackles this game. But Eric Mitchell and Gilliard, they actually did better than what I even remembered from the game. So hats off to them. Defensive backs. So we got some young bloods in there with some good reps. You heard from Richie Grant earlier. He had a phenomenal game, 9 tackles, 6 solo tackles, and 1 fumble recovery. Aaron Robinson was second in line with 6 tackles and 1 solo tackle. He had a couple big hits there when he was playing, and he was playing that nickel spot. So we were wondering if they were going to move him to the boundary or if they were going to keep him that nickel. Looks like that's the case. Antoine Collier, 5 tackles, 4 solo, 1 tackle for a loss. But remember, he didn't play the entire fourth. So he got banged up a little bit and was taken out for the fourth quarter. Zamari Maxwell held his own. That was the big question mark for this year because last year he got burned a little bit. He had 4 tackles, 4 solo. and nobody really burned him. So so far so good for him. Dylan Lester, three tackles, 3 solo, and 1 fumble recovery, and he actually caused the fumble. So that was late in the game, but good for him. Corey Thornton, that was a name that we've been hearing about, and was a preseason freshman All-American. He had 2 tackles and 2 solo tackles. Now, moving on, we get to the D-line. So the D-line was a question as well. Randy Charlton had himself a game. He had 5 tackles, 3 solo tackles, 1.5 tackles for a loss, and 2 passes defended, and 4 QB hurries. So he was all over the field for us, and we have had a lot of expectations for him. Towards the end of the year last year, he didn't play as well, but he had a great game this game. Landon Woodson, 4 tackles, 2 solo. Cam Good, 2 tackles, 1 solo. But again, he went out around halftime with an injury. He was on the sidelines. He didn't go in the back, and I think he's going to be all right. He was back there congratulating guys on the sideline, etc. Steven Zayas, 2 tackles, 1 interception. That was one of our one big boy interceptions, so congratulations to him. That doesn't happen very often. And then our freshman, Mr. Salskar, 2 tackles, 1 solo, 1 fumble recovery, 1 interception, and the 247 freshman of the week. That man had himself a game. And then lastly, we had Kenny Tunier. He had 1 tackle and a half a tackle for a loss, so he helped with that. The big thing we just need to see more of that I was missing was the linebackers keeping containment, and we didn't really see much from the defensive ends. So that's something that I want to see a little more of as well. And lastly, the kicking game. One of the big questions we had was our punting game, and Andrew Osteen did really well. He had 3 punts for 136 yards. I'm hoping he keeps as few punts as possible. He averaged 45.3, which is a great average, and had a 55 yard for his long. So the longest punt that he had was 55 yards. So phenomenal game for him. Really excited about that, because that was an area of concern. You saw that in some of the games from week 1.
Yeah. Well, the defense in general, I was worried about the defensive line, and I was worried about the linebackers. But I also was a little bit worried about Zamari Maxwell out there. All of those guys did pretty well. The defensive line did get pushed around quite a bit in the beginning, but then I think got their feet under them. Still didn't have as much pressure on the quarterback as we would have liked to, but I think that will come. This was a little different. This was a running quarterback. We've always kind of struggled with that. I think that we'll get better with that as time goes along in this season. I think a lot of this was just early first game jitters and just not totally being, in the game and being ready for all that, especially in the beginning. But I think they did a great job as time went on, like I said.
You did see a lot of communication errors, and something to remember, guys. The first touchdown that Georgia Tech had was off the back of that kickoff return, right? Had that not happened, we would have held them to 14 points. So I think that's phenomenal. We had that field goal that we blocked. That's the first one that I've seen in a really long time. Now, again, Georgia Tech has had problems with that. But again, we stopped them from getting points, and I think last week my prediction was 38-17. If they didn't get that kickoff return, that would have been their 17-point game. But, great job by the team, the bend don't break situation. And the big thing for me this game, which was what my concern was, getting turnovers. We kind of slacked off of that a little bit last year. We had a lot of tackles for losses, but not as many turnovers. So we saw 5 that we actually changed possession on, and the guys did a great job. I mean, anytime you got D linemen with 2 D linemen with picks, I mean, that's got to be a great game.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that we can worry a little bit less about the turnover thing after this game for sure. That is awesome. I loved the amount of turnovers we got. That is big, big, big stuff. All right, what's next, Roger? What do you got?
Well, next we'll be flipping the script. So basically what I'm looking at here is what is the narrative around UCF and UCF football in the landscape. So I took a look at some of the traditional habitual offenders that have kind of put us down and looked at what the commentary was after this game. So starting off with McElroy, we talked about him a little bit last week and how I wasn't very happy about him being on the broadcast team because he's always been very, very critical of us and the quote-unquote G5 or Power 6, as we like to call it. But he actually, at the end of the game, he said the American is the third or fourth best league in college football. And I tend to agree with him. So, very, 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 very different narrative than what he said before. Game Day agrees that we're better than FSU. All of them picked us, and Herb Street was on our side, which, again, ever since that Cincinnati game and they were actually on campus, I think that script has flipped for them. Part of that Game Day cast was Bill Murray this week, who was in a hat and a hammock, and he said the nation needs us. So let me ask you about that. Do you think the nation needs us as far as like the underdog, or what do you think? Because I think that is an interesting point.
Well, I think that, yes, I do. I agreed with him, and I loved when I saw that. I think that we're the giant killer. We're the ones that can do it if anybody can do it. And, everybody loves to root for an underdog, even though we're not the underdog in a lot of our games. But being the G5 team, we are the underdog against the mighty Power 5. I say that in air quotes. I do. I think that, and I'm glad that he said that. It was awesome.
Yeah, and the funny thing about college football is this, right? Up until this point, for the large part, it didn't matter if we were the Giant Slayers. We still do. I mean, you look at the Georgia Tech fans and what was being said before. They still throw us under the bus. And, I'll talk about that a little bit later on some of the other quotes. So Aaron Torres says, he calls us one of the most consistently excellent programs and delivers as a heavy favorite week in and week out. And I think why that's important is it talks about the consistency of the program. So it's no longer a narrative about the team. It is now about the program. And I think now that we've done this for 4 or 5 years in a row at a very, very high level, thanks to Dylan Gabriel and the coaching staff and the tweaks that we had, I think that says a lot about where we are as a program and how we're viewed. And then Barrett Sally, UCF's favorite poll hater, which I think that position has now been taken over, as I alluded to earlier. He said we are the best team in the state of Florida to have played this year and thinks that we have a legit chance to make the playoff. He said the gap between FSU and UCF is not even close. Knights are light years ahead.
That's good. I like hearing that. And I have to go back a little bit. You were talking about the Georgia Tech fans. Well, how do you like me now? I mean, what do you think now about all the crap that you talked? And all of a sudden, where are you now?
They're hiding in their honey holes.
Yeah, they're hiding in their mom's basements because that's where these guys are tweeting from anyway. And it's ridiculous. So I love the haters. Because they look stupid each and every week when they start to talk like that. We need to make more and more of them. I love them.
Well, and it's like I've talked about ad nauseum.
I think our players love them as well, because if you don't think the players read some of that stuff, you're out of your mind.
Oh, check out Kenny Tunye's Twitter feed lately. He's been all over that stuff. So I liken us to the 2000s Miami teams in the sense that, and I'm glad for that, is that we were the bad boys. Now, we aren't the bad boys and that we're not doing cocaine and hookers like they did back in the day. We're not Dan Sileo.
But we have juice. We got juice.
Yeah, the different kind of juice they were doing back then.
Exactly.
But we're the team that loves to be hated, and that's because we're successful. So if we keep that going, I'm fine with that. There's still that Danny White's immortal words about national champions that people still hate. So let them continue to hate. I think the narrative is changing. Lenny Curry says UCF has been ignored and disrespected, but UCF has built a program that deserves respect. And again, it's that program. And then Dennis Dodd, who has not been he's
been on Knightline, by the way. Dennis Dodd has been on Knightline. Go back and look.
Yeah.
Good guy.
He says he has Dylan Gabriel on his number one on his Heisman watch list. So that's a huge deal.
That's impressive. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially as a sophomore. I mean, you think about how long it took Mackenzie Milton to get into that conversation. He has him number 1, so that's great. And then our friends at Saturday Down South, which are a SEC homer. Part of this, I think, is rubbing it in the faces of FSU, but part of it is you've started to see them be a little more supportive of UCF. It says FSU didn't score against Georgia Tech. UCF hung half 100 with ease on them. So I think they're getting their respect finally.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, a couple little odds and ends around the AAC. Navy came back and won 27-24 over Tulane. That was a good game if you watched the end of that. Good to see Navy get their feet under them a little bit and get the boat back floating. SMU dominated North Texas 65-35. Memphis still sits. Houston still sits. AAC is 7-3 out of conference, 3-0 versus the Sun Belt, 1-1 against the AAC.
And let me pause you there. We can thank Tulsa for completely pooping the bed on that one because they should have beat Oklahoma State. I actually watched that the latter part of that game. Was extremely frustrated. If they had any kind of offensive pulse, they would have waxed Oklahoma State.
Yeah, absolutely. The Cows got creamed, which I loved. I was watching that score the entire time during our game because they were playing at the same time. 52-0 Notre Dame in that one. I love that. I love it every freaking time.
Well, you were watching half the score, right? Because Notre Dame's was moving and the Cows were not.
Yeah. So, well, that's good, though. A pretty good showing this week for them. All right, next week we're up against ECU. It's their first of the season. That should be fairly easy. I don't really want to say that, but in the past, that has been a fairly easy game. So we'll see. They do have a fairly decent quarterback. We're going to talk a lot more about that Tuesday night on Knightline at night. We'll have a little bit more of a preview than we're going to have here because we had such a game to talk about this week. The dead period is extended for recruiting through December 31st for visits, etc. You can do no contact. We'll see the impact of that. So that's a little bit of a big deal as far as recruiting goes. That's different this year. Temple has been cleared to play at the link, finally. So our game against them looks a little bit more promising to have there. So good going there. Excited about that.
Yeah, me too. And the fact that they can practice, right? Because remember, up to this point, they've only been able to practice with 5 guys at a time. And you saw what happens when you can't practice. Look at the difference with Navy week 1 versus week 2. So, and lastly, let's talk a little bit about the FPI. So ESPN has us as their 5th highest team with the 5th best chance to make the playoff at 32.4%. Now, granted, that does not include the Big Ten in there yet. However, that's the highest it's ever been. So that's phenomenal news for UCF.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break, but when we come back, we'll open the Ask Knightline inbox next on Knightline 237. Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley reminding you to tune in every Tuesday night, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app for Knightline at Night. Brought to you by Chad Bar Law. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Knightline at Night, every Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app. Go Knights and charge on.
I'm Jeff Allen. Join me each and every week on the Knightline Sports Network for the AAC Report. We bring you in-depth coverage of each school in football, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer, golf, tennis, and more, as well as bring you insider interviews and focus in on the biggest games and news of the week. That's all right here each week on the AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network.
Spice up your company with homemade marketing services from Tasty Gravy Creative. Tasty Gravy serves up a menu of budget-friendly marketing, graphic design, and public relations services customized to your specific goals. Co-owned by a UCF graduate, Tasty Gravy can help refresh your brand, strengthen your online presence, or reinforce your company's message. Contact Tasty Gravy for help with your website, social media, marketing, advertising materials, and more. Visit tastygravy.com.
Ask a Knightline is brought to you by Chad Barr Law. Chad is a UCF alumnus and diehard Knights fan. Chad Barr Law handles auto accident, slip and fall, and personal injury cases. Call Chad today at 407-599-9036 for a free consultation. That's 407-599-9036. Armor up and call Chad Barr Law today. All right, time again for Ask Knightline. We're answering the questions listeners posted on our Facebook page or via Twitter at #AskKnightline. UCF Selena again. I wore a yellow tie-dye shirt, ripped jeans, and my old UCF alumni hat. It was a pretty decisive win. Should I plan on wearing the same outfit every time, or should I just make sure I have it with me and change during game time if we start to fall behind? Roger, I'll let you take that one.
Well, my first suggestion is no matter what you do, make sure you wash it every time that you wear it, just simply because it gets hot out there in our stadium, and that could get a little funky. For me, I'd rather you just wear it. One, it's easier to do, and two, if it works, stick with it.
Yeah, if it works, go for it, Selena. I wear the same exact jersey all the time. I wear my white number 10 jersey. Even if it's a blackout game or something like that, I will put my other jersey on top of it. I am a firm believer in wearing the same stuff every time. So if it's working, don't change it. Absolutely. Also, she has another question. Curious about your opinion on the tempo. Surprised that we won time of possession by a bit over 3 minutes. It's certainly not the norm for UCF anymore. Yes, I was surprised by that. It doesn't happen very often, but I think the tempo of the game can change. So this time we came out on top of that. But if it works, it works. We were still got a lot of points, got a lot of plays off, and won the game handily. So I don't really care if we win the time of possession, because we've seen in the past that we've done really well without winning it. But you also saw in games like when we played LSU, that time of possession was extremely important, and we really were on the wrong side of it there. So happy to be on the right side of it, but normally it doesn't matter.
Yeah, for me, when we're talking about tempo, we were actually faster than we've ever been. I mean, we were snapping the ball within 5 seconds of the time starting, so the play clock starting. So for me, that was really, really interesting to see, because it threw Georgia Tech off balance quite a bit. But remember, too, in the first half especially, Georgia Tech actually is a tempo team as well. They don't go as quickly as what we do, but that first half just flew by. And then the third thing to remember is turnovers. So we had more possessions. Typically, we score pretty quickly within 90 seconds. Usually it's less than that. It's usually below 60 seconds, which means it's only a few plays. So with us having more possessions and marching up and down the field and getting more of those opportunities to score, I think that had a major impact on it as well. I mean, if we have that tempo team and we have the time of possession, that means we have more chances to score. And with this team, that means dubs.
Absolutely. All right. At Golden Knight 2 asks, what was your take on the O-line? I feel that we were underwhelming, creating holes for the run and protection. I don't know if I agree with that. I think that they did fairly well. They probably could have done a little bit better, but I was not. I didn't think they were underwhelming. So I don't agree with that one. Roger?
I'm with you on that for a couple reasons. One, as you heard a little bit earlier in the show, we were surprised completely by the defense that was thrown at us, and I think they did a pretty good job of adjusting to that. When I was watching Dylan drop back, I saw him have all the time in the world back there to allow plays to develop and our receivers to get open. There were a couple of times, and that's where he took those big sacks where he was trying to get to the sideline so he could dump it off. But other than that, I think they did pretty good. As far as the running game is concerned, we actually passed a little bit more than we ran. But when you look at it and look at the stats that we had before, when you're averaging 5 yards a carry, 4.9 versus 5.8, I mean, that means you're doing something right. And that was a little bit of patience and waiting on those blocks and those gaps. And those running backs can't do that without it. So especially when you're looking that we're not doing it sideline to sideline like Frost's scheme used to. We're going right up the middle. So to me, given all of that, 91 plays that we had,
92?
that we ran, 92 plays. I mean, you can't keep defenses at bay forever, and that D-line did really, really well against Florida State. So I think overall they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, just because we don't agree does not mean that we don't appreciate your question, Golden Knight, too. Really appreciate it. All right, the next one comes from Professor Buttons, Prof. Buttons. All right, so his question, or her question, already a few key injuries in this game. Who would be the bigger loss? Greg McCray or Trey? I'm going to say Trey is a big loss. Even though we're pretty deep at the wide receiver position, I think we're a lot deeper at the running back position. We've seen what it looks like without Greg McCray. But Trey Nixon, it was going to be a very, very important part of our offense this year.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for sending in a question. Secondly, I'm really curious as to the meaning of your screen name. So if you would hit us up and let us know what that is, I'm really interested in that. To your question, Greg or Trey, that is a huge question for me because half of me says, hey, we've got a lot of depth at wide receiver. Half of me says we got a lot of depth at running back. So I think we can overcome either side of that. However, I think Trey was primed for a breakout year. He was going to be the number one option. He has speed. He did a lot better at tracking the ball from what we saw him and positioning himself with the ball. So to me, I think Trey Nixon has the bigger impact. You saw he averaged, I think, what was the number, 24 yards per catch. I mean, you just can't replace that. Those are Brashad Perriman and Gabe Davis numbers on that explosiveness, and we really thrive on that. So I think we have some replacements there, but I agree with Andrew. I think Trey's the bigger loss right now.
Yeah. All righty. Thank you very much for your participation and your questions and interacting with us. We really appreciate it. And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports.
Washington Monthly Magazine's new rankings of the top public educational institutions ranks UCF as the 40th best university in the nation, 9th best bang for the buck in the Southeast, and one of the best for student voting. The magazine's 2020 College Guide and Rankings rated 389 institutions on how well they serve the country as a whole by recruiting and graduating lower and middle income students, encouraging student activism, and producing research and technologies that create high-paying jobs and address threats like climate change. When adding non-public universities and colleges to the rankings, UCF ranks 71st best in the nation and 18th best bang for the buck in the Southeast.
All right, UCF researchers are helping develop a rapid, longer-lasting COVID disinfectant. The disinfectant spray will use UCF-developed serum oxide nanoparticles that have been shown to have a wide range of therapeutic properties. The disinfectant spray could be sent to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for approval at the end of a one-year period. After that, it would appear on the market, the researchers say.
UCF was named number one aerospace defense workforce supplier for the 6th year in a row, using insight from companies in these industries. Aviation Week Network also ranked the university as the number 2 preferred supplier in the U.S. for the 6th year in a row for aerospace and defense agencies. The university was also named the most preferred supplier in Florida and ranked number 2 in the nation, just behind Georgia Institute of Technology. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, at least we're close there, I guess. An update on the Arecibo Observatory facility in Puerto Rico after telescope damage. A detailed structural model of the current state of the entire telescope began August 17th and is expected to be completed within the next few weeks. While no cause has yet been determined, the AO leadership team is working closely with the National Science Foundation, which owns the facility, to implement a plan to first stabilize the critical structure elements of the facility and to initiate a full forensic investigation. I always mess something up in these things.
Forensic. I like that one.
Well, that was new. Forensic. Oh, boy, I'm tired by the time we get to these. Anyway, forensic investigation of the cause of the cable failure. UCF manages the NSF facility under a cooperative agreement with Universidad Ana G. Mendez and Yang Enterprises Incorporated. This is in Puerto Rico, and it is a very, very large telescope, a radio telescope. And if you ever watched the movie Contact, I believe it was, they were there in Arecibo. Very, very cool place if you're into that kind of stuff, and I am, so thought that was important to put in there. All right, that'll do it for Knightline 237. I'm Andrew Phegley.
And I'm Roger Phipps. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF, charge on to the field with our spirits will never